So there was a lot not to like about 2020, but 2020 did bring into my life a connection with a fantastic group called Extraordinary Women on Boards, which, just as the name suggests, is full of extraordinary women, and they're all on boards in some meaningful capacity. So I'm just thrilled to have Lisa Shalett, who's the founder of the group, here with me to talk about some of the things that happened in 2020, some of the things we've learned, and what we're looking forward to in 2021. So Lisa, it's terrific to have you here.
Thank you so much, Rita. It is really an honor. And I have to say, it's been fascinating that my relationship with you on behalf of Extraordinary Women on Boards has really bookended, at least the beginning, of this pandemic. Because I remember the first session we had with you was right before the pandemic really kicked in. I think it was the end of February, before we really could see around that corner. And we had this phenomenal session about inflection points. Then you were amazing and reached out, as we all were kind of trying to figure out what a crazy world we were in, and offered to have a conversation with us about being in the midst of an inflection point. And then recently, as all of these board directors are trying to think about strategy and how to make sense of what just happened and apply that to 2021, it was really wonderful to gather with you again. So you have been extraordinary to us. Thank you.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure. There's such a great group of people. Just wonderful to have. Women in these positions are often very lonely. I know both you and I have spent most of our lives in pretty male-dominated industries, and sometimes it's just such a relief to be able to ask a question without anybody kind of looking at you like, you should have known that, or just express yourself in some other way. And I think what you're doing with the convening of the group has been really amazing. And now with the pandemic, I understand you're really able to go beyond just the New York geography.
Yes. So initially, one of the things that's just been magical about community that I think has only been more amplified in this pandemic, but even before, we all were virtual and had sort of constraints in a way of being physical. It was such a welcoming and inclusive and generous group that was really founded on respect for one's peers. And going virtually has been even more of that. So yeah, we've gone nationwide and in 7 other countries, all through organic referrals. So to become a member of the group, you need to be referred by a member of the group, and that has been, really a great source of just preservation of that tremendous magical, generosity and desire to learn and really be excellent board directors.
Yeah, and I think it's been fascinating to see how seriously the roles are being taken. I mean, I personally believe in the next few years, we're going to see an enormous amount of attention and focus on the role of boards. I think there's going to be a lot more requirements that they be accountable. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot more pressure on boards to make sure that management teams are doing right by their employees, by their communities, the whole business roundtable notion. So what are some of the things that you're seeing boards taking an interest in the next year or so?
I really think that underlying all of the conversations that we have had in this group, and I think you've been a real inspiration for this as well, Rita, with your work, has been a new way of thinking about risk. And I think that there are so many ways in which things are all connected. And I typically companies are organized by silos. Typically board committees are organized by function. And I think what we're finding, both from the pandemic itself, which really was a convergence of so many issues, but each issue had ripple effects that were relevant to each other. And even if you look at board committees, where you have, what traditionally was the comp committee now having to take on all aspects of human capital and diversity, where does that fit? But it runs across everything. I think one of the main lessons is that as much as it's important to have verticals and depth, it is also really a non-negotiable now to have horizontals of how things relate to one another, how the depth relates to the breadth. And I do think that does allow us to see around corners better. And I just can't imagine life without that anymore.
Yeah, I would agree. I think one of the challenges for board members is forming the right kind of partnership with management teams. So I sort of see three kind of archetypes. One is where they're just completely owned by the management team and they're not really independent at all. Another is where they've got this sort of uneasy truce, like management doesn't want to reveal more than they absolutely have to, and the boards really would like to know more, but they don't want to sort of overstep their bounds. And then there's this third ideal, which is a much more healthy relationship, where the board is a supportive, person, but also, somebody who asks smart but tough questions, who's willing to probe, who's willing to help problem solve, not just ask management questions and make them look silly, but, how do we get to the bottom of this? How do we get to the best that we can be? And I think more and more, I hope companies are developing that third model, because otherwise, what's a board really for?
Yeah, look, I think that the pandemic and all of the challenges that have come for managements and for boards and together has really held up a mirror. Part of that is, how does this board function? Does it function well? Is this really a team with the right skills? And I think there's a lot of recalibration now that is going to take place. And I also think that there are elements of trust that have been shown to be there or not, which is incredibly important. And look, I think, it's always said a crisis is an opportunity. And, you really get to see who's on your team during a crisis. And I would like to think that one of the most important functions of boards has been to, bring a diversity of perspective to a management team that's very focused on the company, because these board directors have done different things in their careers and maybe sit on different boards and can help define what perspective and emerging best practices are, when frankly, there haven't been the old best practices to rely on. So I think that's been really, really interesting.
It is fascinating to see, as I say in my book, the more diversity of thought you can bring to a situation, the more robust your solutions are likely to be. So we're nearly out of time, but if we could pick sort of three topics that you'd like to get this group of people thinking about for 2020, do you have a short list?
For 2020?
2021, sorry.
For 2020.
I'm going to be in 2020 forever. It just feels like that.
It's hard to narrow it to three topics. I think that the whole notion of stakeholder has broadened. I think that there are activists, not in the bad sense of the word, everywhere. And I think the forces from outside pressure for change are real. And so there really needs to be an open attitude as to why do we do what we do the way we do it, and how might be ways in which we can continue to evolve and do things better. So I think that that's number one. Number two is something that I really carry around from your work, talking with you in your book every single day, which is, how am I getting information well? Both enabling me to see around corners and anticipate. And I think we've all had a major boot camp in, what can be anticipated and what we wish we had known or had known. But I love your concept of information from the edges, because I think that's a cultural concept. And I think culture is a very big topic for boards. But I also think it is a way to ensure that we're always seeking out information, taking in information from across the organization. And in a way, it brings in, diversity of thought too, as a concept, as you just said. I think otherwise it is around, how do teams work together well, whether that team is the board itself, whether that team is the management and the board. There has to be trust. There has to be a lens of a healthy relationship and transparency and communication. And I think that those are the things ultimately that are underlying a lot of the different a lot of the different topics and challenges that are on the boardroom agenda today.
Absolutely. Well, Lisa, it's been just such a pleasure to have you join us. This Thought Spark is all about the conversation that we had, appropriately edited, of course. So those of you that would like to take a sneak peek at what goes on in the Extraordinary Women on Boards meetings, have a look. And if you'd like to learn more, where should they go, Lisa?
You could just, find me on LinkedIn or lisa.shalett@gmail.com.
Awesome.
And Rita, thank you so much. When I think of friends of Extraordinary Women on Boards, you are at the top of the list.
Oh, that's great. That's an honor. That's a real honor. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.